Also, I'm really happy to be here. And we have Alicia Roman from Elizabeth Public Library, who is going to be talking about outreach to immigrant communities, which I know is such an important topic for so many of us in New Jersey, because this is something we're all focused on and something we could all do a little bit better at, I think, as well. So, Alicia, do you want to get started?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I work in the Information and Adult Services Department. I'm a library associate. Oh, Jeff is here. Hello, Jeff Reiser. um, but yeah, Elizabeth is a very diverse community, and I kind of wanted to hear a little bit if anybody would like to share, what kind of programs and services you've been providing, maybe even like kind of things that you've learned along the way, or any setbacks, any questions you might have on outreach to immigrant communities. But I'm pretty excited to just kind of hear the flow of ideas and experiences from everybody, because it's so important, especially in such a diverse state as New Jersey. And it's especially important to also serve underrepresented groups, underserved populations. So if anybody wants to participate, anybody wants to join in and talk a little bit, we're all ears. Should I talk a little bit about what I've been doing? Or?
Yeah, do you want to share what you've been doing, Alicia?
Yeah, okay, so I'll start with what I've been doing. So I started as a library associate back in January, so not too long ago. But a few of the things that I've been doing mainly have to do with translations. So I noticed a lot of times patrons would come up to me and they're like, hey, can you please translate, the newsletter for me? I don't really understand what this program is all about, and then I started thinking, like, why translate it verbally when we can just like translate it fully? And then Jeff said, hey, maybe today's the month to do it. Like, let's start it today. So then I started translating the newsletter, getting feedback from other library workers, in my library who also spoke Spanish. And the feedback was great. A lot of people were so happy about it. I had people come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, like, I know what the program's all about. And that's the best feeling ever, honestly. I also worked on doing a little section with a colleague on our website, which is just about library resources for Hispanic populations, Hispanic communities. So it talks about our literacy program, our databases for learning a different language, basically any program, service, or resource that they can use that would directly benefit them. And it's all in Spanish too, because I felt like, what's the point of having it on there if, again, it's going to be in English and they can't understand the description? So I try to make it so that, the description's in Spanish, but also when you click on the flyer, it will come out in Spanish as well. And I think it's also a really nice opportunity for people to see that we really do care. And we see them and we want to provide these resources to them, and not just a certain amount of people or, a certain specific kind of people. And that's pretty much what I've done. It's something that's very dear to my heart. I think that libraries should be accessible to everybody. And when we think of different ways in which we can help different populations, it just feels more diverse, and I think people really do appreciate it and they notice it. So yeah.
Just trying a few things. I'm actually, and I'm very curious to learn again from other people here what has been successful. I'm relatively new to my branch. I'm from the Boundbrook branch of the Somerset County Library System, which is a very heavily immigrant community. I've only been here since February, but outreach to the immigrant population here is definitely one of our branch managers, like, probably number one priority. So I definitely, what Alicia was sort of saying about translations, that's something that, is something we've really been, working on here. I think when the branch manager started about maybe 18 months ago, there was very little or no signage anywhere in the library in Spanish at all, which, considering I think the stats are about 50% the brown book population is Spanish speaking. Also really made it a priority to hire Spanish speaking staff here at the branch. Most, if not all of our recent hires have been bilingual. So it's really been helpful to have the bilingual flyers, bilingual calendars, bilingual signage just within the library. So that's really helpful. We've also trying to been doing outreach to get outside of the library, because we know, a lot of, especially for people who come from communities or countries where free public libraries isn't really like a thing or an assumption, just kind of get out there, like, this is free, especially now that we're fine free, literally everything in the system's free. So we've been doing something that we just started. We've actually only been doing it 2 weeks, but it's been a really great success so far, is visiting the county food bank, which isn't specifically 100% immigrant community, but at least half the people we've sort of had conversations with for the past 2 weeks have been Spanish speaking community members. So we've really prioritized bringing bilingual staff, no matter what department they're from. Again, any library worker who speaks Spanish is going to be better at pitching the library than a librarian or a branch manager who doesn't speak Spanish to Spanish speaking population. So we've really been doing that. That's been really successful. So we hope to continue that. And then one other last thing I did at my previous job at East Brunswick is we tried to reach out to a lot of the religious groups in the community, thinking that was a way potentially to sort of, meet people. So one strong success we had is East Brunswick has a large number of Egyptian immigrants, many of whom went to there's a Coptic Christian church in town. So we made contacts with the, church leadership. I started going to preschool that was run out of the, church. And you're really, you could sort of see there's definitely community members who were able to reach in those settings that we wouldn't necessarily, reach in other situations. So sort of thinking about non-traditional partnerships like religious groups was something I found useful. So that's what I've been up to for the first 3 months I've been here. But yeah, again, I'd love to hear what everybody else is up to. So yeah, thanks.
Aaron, may I ask what you do at the food bank?
Sure. Yeah. And again, it's totally an emerging thing. We've been there just 2 weeks. When we first pitched the idea actually to the executive director, he thought it was a little crazy. So he said, I guess you can come if you want to. So it's a county food bank, which is, so everybody in the county is eligible to come. And since we're a county library system, we've been able to go issue library cards. And because we can issue cards to not just our municipality, it's been really helpful. So we've been able to issue actually 14 library cards in the 2 weeks we've been there. We have mobile hotspots. So we've been carrying those and really promoting those, for people sort of saying if you don't have internet access in your home, because we see, a lot of the immigrant community come in and use our computers. We currently don't have, it'd be great if we eventually would start moving towards like lendable Chromebooks or something like that. But at least now we can do the hotspots. We've been bringing kids materials to check out kids books, information about ESL programs. A great story, and this literally happened 2 days ago. There was a family, a husband, a wife, and one of their dads. The husband was the only person who spoke English in the family. He signed his dad up for a library card. His wife was pregnant due this summer. He got her information about ESL class so she could, practice speaking English, and also about a flyer about our story times. So when she had a baby, she'd come to story time. So really, it's like, that's a great example of kind of hitting all different demographics, almost 3 generations, some which spoke English, some of which were, wanting to do the ESL stuff. So circulation, library cards, library programs. We may potentially start doing some story times later on. It's unclear whether kids are actually allowed into the food bank. I don't think they are currently, but the director said they may start relaxing that over the summer when school's out. So if there are more kids who are actually there, we may do pop-up story times possibly too. So we're also cognizant that the people who visit may not have tons of time. So we're trying to do quick things to hit them on their way in, on their way out, quick, meaningful interactions. So we don't they have stuff going on in their lives. So we really want to try to make it as, as brief as possible, but still giving the good information.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So one thing to suggest about the translation for us in Maplewood are the biggest immigrant community we have is Haitian. So you can't always get everything translated. And Google Translate isn't the best, but it's at least something. So our website, when it was developed a few years ago, we made sure that that was a feature that people could use. So if that's an issue for other people, that's one way around it. We do have, we have 2 buildings, and we have Spanish speakers and a French speaker in the adult services building. So that's helpful because she can talk to the Haitian Creole speakers and they get the point across. So that's good. We do ESL classes. Right now they're virtual. And outreach has always been kind of an issue for us, but I'm learning a few things as I go along. And another avenue is local restaurants. So last couple of days, we're doing a USCIS program next week for temporary protected status for the Haitian community. And so I went to a couple of Haitian restaurants in the last couple of days and had flyers, asked them to put up flyers, and they are. And I reach out also to the school district for things, the ELL department. I always send our ESL flyers to them for any parents that might be interested. And we get money from the state for our ESL program. So a lot of our students aren't just from Maplewood. We have students from Irvington, Newark. So I've been reaching out to those communities, sending the libraries the information as well. That's what we're doing.
Irene, would you be able to share what translation company or service you use for the website to translate it to different languages?
It's just Google. It's Google.
Just Google.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not fantastic, but
Yeah.
it gets the point across, basically.
Have you gotten any feedback at all about it?
No, I'm not even sure that people have used it. We just made sure that it would work. And for the TPS program for the Haitian community, we actually hired somebody to do translation of the flyer for that, but we can't afford to do that all the time. So unfortunately, we don't have a Creole staff member. So this is one way, and we made sure that Google could do the Creole translation, and they do. Again, I'm not sure how good it is, but it's better than nothing, I guess. It's the best thing.
If it makes you feel any better, I did use Google Translate for a little Haitian cheat sheet for learning English.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a staff member who speaks the language, and she told me it was almost perfect.
Great, I'm good.
So
that just made me feel better.
Yeah, that's a little bit. It made me feel a little bit better. I'm like, okay, I was hoping that Google really pulled through, and it did. So
maybe I should do that for everything.
Maybe.
For
I mean,
my ESL flyers. Just
maybe.
use Google Translate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate you don't have somebody to look it over.
Right. I can get a patron to look it over for me, though.
That actually might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Actually, now it's Haitian, Heritage Month, and a colleague of mine, she distributed her flyers to different restaurants in the community that were Haitian restaurants. And I think that helps a lot too. Sometimes we forget the power of just word of mouth, and just kind of getting yourself out there and distributing things and hoping that people will tell each other that something's coming up. But that really does work. It's really, sometimes people say oh, so-and-so told me about this. And I'm like, wow, that's wonderful that I didn't even know it was going across that far,
Yeah, and I knew that there's one Haitian restaurant in Maplewood, but I didn't know where the others were. So I just Googled it, Haitian restaurants near me. And so that's what I'm working off of. And we did have, we had a page this was a few years back, who was part of the Haitian community, and she would take the flyers for the ESL programs to her church. So that's somewhere I have to make the next move, is to try to figure out whether I just go to the churches and say, will you post this, or so that's my next step.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And Kathy, I'm sorry, your hand is up and you've been patiently waiting. If you'd like to say something.
No, that's fine. I was happy to wait till Irene was done because I wanted to comment on some of the things that she said. So I am not working in a library now, but I am a marketing consultant. And I also am editor of the newsletter called Marketing Library Services. So I talk to tons of people around the country, and I'm finishing up a consulting project now for people in the state of Wisconsin who were given mini marketing grants to do, whatever their projects were. And a couple of them were specifically doing outreach to non-English speakers. And so I wanted to share some of the things I recommended to them, especially one thing that the person found extremely helpful. So one person in particular, I think in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, was trying to reach out to people who spoke, I think it was Hmong language. And of course, he did not speak Hmong. And he said, well, we could use Google Translate and put some things out there. And I said, what you really need to do is make friends in that community. You need a couple of library champions. You need people willing to help you with this. So think about people who are kind of leaders in that community. And I did mention grocery stores and restaurants and churches. And he, was writing things down like, okay, well, I don't know, but I'll give it a shot. And when I had the next consultation with him, he was over the moon. He said, I did what you recommended, and I had 2 amazing conversations with people in the community. One was from a Catholic church, and she happened to be some kind of super community dynamo who does an awful lot of help with translation and with trying to get her community more acclimated to the Fond du Lac area. And so she says, oh, what a great idea. It's so nice that the library wants to help. I'll take your flyers. I'll announce it in church. I'll talk to people I know specifically. I will announce it at our, occasional food bank that we have at church. And I will also translate things for you. So she, as an individual, became so excited about someone wanting to reach her community, that she was the perfect person to start reaching the individuals and drawing them in to the library. Something else that we learned along the way with a different person was trying to reach a Spanish speaking community. And he said, well, I know there's a mobile home park on this part of town, and I don't know anyone there, but they're mostly immigrants. And so he went to, I think, the person who kind of was the office manager of the mobile home park, and explained what he was doing. And they said, oh, well, yes, we can do this and we can do that, and I'll put up posters here and there. So but another conversation I had with him about that, I said, what information do you want to translate to give to these Spanish speaking people? I just want to push the library card. Everything. I want to tell people how to get a library card. And I said, how do you know they want a library card? And he's like, what do you mean? Why doesn't anyone want a library card? And I explained that oftentimes, as someone already said here, not everyone is from a country where they have free libraries. It sounds too good to be true. It sounds ridiculous. And in some cases, for people who have migrated north, it sounds like a trap, because they are very unwilling to give their names and phone numbers and addresses to any form of government agency because they're afraid it's going to get turned over to ICE and that people are going to come looking for them and try to deport them. So that was a big barrier that he had never thought about. And so I said, I think first you need to start just telling the people the library exists here and this is what it does and this is what it's for, and do much smaller things first with that community, like the ESL classes that they don't have to sign up with a library card to get, and then build trust with that community, and then more slowly encourage them to get library cards so that they can use other services. And that really made a difference in his approach, because he just assumed, well, of course, if I offer them a card, everyone wants a card. They want to sign up right away, but they don't. And so that that really helped him to change his approach in what he was doing.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. You touched on so many important points. And I think maybe we can spend a few minutes kind of breaking it down a bit. Because, well, specifically when you spoke about, you know, not everybody wants a library card. That's so true. A lot of people, first of all, they don't know how many free resources come with the library card. But there's also that fear, like you said, that their information is being given out, you know. And I had patrons come up to me at our library. We're doing something called the Community Advisory Board, which is an opportunity for community members to come and talk about what programs, services, resources they want available at their library. And we're doing one separately in Spanish, which I am leading. And I've had 2 or 3 people, you know, when I plug the Community Advisory Board program in or meeting in, they'll tell me, oh, but I don't have papers, you know, and can I still come to this? And I didn't really think about that before I even started, you know, the Community Advisory Board. And this is something that obviously I've experienced. You know, I have family members who are undocumented, but it didn't occur to me that this would be something that people would be concerned about. And so that's when I reached out to this organization called Make the Road New Jersey. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but essentially they provide resources to undocumented people in New Jersey. And I even told them, listen, please, if you can let them know that this is available for them, they can come to these meetings. It's not recorded. You know, I'm not going to give their information out, and it's for anybody, you know, undocumented or documented. So that's something that's really important to think about. What immigrant populations might be concerned about that we might not initially think about. But also the importance of community partnerships, like you said, just really putting our face out there and reaching out to those churches, you know, to those nonprofits, to other important organizations that are already doing the work as well, and saying, hey, look, this is available at the library. Please come. You're welcome here. You know, that is so important. Anybody else want to talk about the things that Kathy mentioned? Any points or questions?
ICE and everything. So do we know, like, what is the legality of that? Like, could their information be used against them here? I mean, like, against our will?
That's
It
a great
depends on the political
question.
situation at the time.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I don't think so. It couldn't be done easily, because we know that librarians have fought numerous times to keep their patrons' personal information and borrowing history private. So if anyone really wanted to get that, my understanding is they would have to have a warrant, some kind of warrant to be served and go to the library to get the info. But I think that they cannot get a blanket warrant, like, hey, let's just go see who all your patrons are. They have to have a reason. They have to have whatever the phrase is, reasonable
cause.
Reasonable
cause,
cause, yeah.
yeah, something to show that they suspect a particular person before they could even get a warrant and ask for info on that particular person. But they cannot go through, just blatantly go through library records on their own and on a fishing expedition. So that they can't do.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, because I just feel like in that instance, it's like tough to try to convince someone, you know, like, oh, you can trust me and whatever. I mean, yeah, maybe they can trust you as a person, but at the end of the day, if the law comes in, like, you know, so it's just rough.
Right. And I think most libraries too have policies on that. You can always check your patron privacy policies. That should say something specific about that. But Kristen, you make another point that there's no way that we as individuals can reach these people, especially a lot of them. So we really have to have someone who is already trusted in their community and have, you know, these one-on-one conversations to first help that person understand the importance and everything that a library can offer to people. And then let them start doing the word of mouth and the announcements and everything else within their community. And, you know, it will definitely take time to build that up. You're not going to get 50 people in library card sign up month because you made a flyer in August, you know. So it's really a long-term thing.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So if no one else is jumping in, I will add one other thing from my recent Wisconsin conversations. The man who I spoke about at first met someone who was had a grocery market with a little restaurant, and sat down with him and said the owner was a little distrusting at first, but as he explained more, he got on board and said that, and then he started giving advice to the guy. Well, if you want to reach more people, do this and don't do that. And the librarian actually took with him a draft copy of a postcard that he was getting ready to print and send out. And the grocer said, oh, well, it could be better with this and that, and don't use this word because it has that kind of connotation, but maybe say this instead. And one of the other things he reminded was for any Spanish speaking population to make your promotional pieces very colorful. They really, a lot of things in that culture are super colorful, lots of bright, you know, splashy, and not just for holidays, but for everything. So with that advice, this librarian actually went back and redesigned his postcard with some different pictures and different words and like big, you know, colorful sunburst things on it. And it was totally different. And the grocer went back to the grocer and showed him, and he says, oh, this will get a lot more attention now. So just even sometimes knowing little things like that, little cultural tips, show the people who are receiving the postcard that you have done your due diligence and you have some idea who they are and what matters to them, which goes a long way.
Thank you very much, Kathy. That is so true. Just the importance of one, reaching out to different community members and organizations, but also, like you said, showing that you did the work, right? If they give you feedback, don't just let it, you know, don't just slip it under the rug and say, all right, I got the feedback, that's it, you know, but actually putting in the work and showing that you paid attention to what they said and that you cared enough to do the work. that's really important. But also, like you mentioned, just reaching out to these people in person and wanting to hear what they need to say. Don't be afraid to do surveys, like surveys are great, in my opinion. It really lets you know what the community's thinking, where they're at, what they feel. Sometimes people take the opportunity to say things that might hurt a little bit, they sting a little bit, but it's stuff that is necessary, right? It's needed, and there are changes that can be made. I know that when we did our survey in the Elizabeth Public Library, we got some feedback that, kind of stung a little bit. I got some feedback that, what's the point of doing the newsletter in Spanish if not all the programs are in Spanish, right? So people assume that they're going to be in Spanish to get there and the program isn't in Spanish, right? So it's kind of like a tease. I completely understood where they were coming from. And some people might feel like, oh, like, who's this person? Tell me what to do or whatever. But that's the whole point. We want to hear what the community needs, what they want. And then eventually I fixed it and I made it so that the next newsletter, put specifically which programs were bilingual, which weren't, which were completely in English. But people are able to see that. I don't know if that specific person saw it, but just knowing that everybody else will be able to benefit from something that I didn't even realize was a thing or was an issue. That on its own, you're able to help people without even maybe directly helping that person. You're indirectly helping so many other people too.
How are you distributing the survey? Do you just have a paper survey in the library, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, so we did it a few different ways. We had a paper survey that we would keep at circulation desks. So when people would check out books and stuff, they would kind of just slip it in there. We also put them in the newsletter, in the physical newsletter, a little page in there. And we also had the one that you can do online, which was available on our website. Like if you scroll down on the homepage, you would see, please fill out the survey. And then that one was just like a Google form. So it was available in English and Spanish, but essentially asked people, what kind of programs do you want to see at the library? Do you have any feedback? Were your trips to the library successful? Did you get what you came here for? Or did you leave maybe not without receiving the help that you needed? And some of these questions can be tricky, right? Because like sometimes people, they use that opportunity to just kind of say whatever. And that's good though, because we wanted to know what people were thinking. We wanted to know how we can better serve the community.
Is there any way that I could get like an example of one of those surveys so I could see what's on there? And
yeah, I believe I could send it to you. I don't
awesome, thank you. I'd really appreciate that.
No worries.
Kathy, that's a valid point that you made in the chat, but
yeah,
there is also the issue of internet access for many of our populations. So it's does have to tend to be different avenues to put it out there. And then
yeah,
if you put it somewhere else, are you ever going to see the results of it, get them back? And it's a tough thing.
Yeah, it is tough because I thought, the paper one would be great for people who come in person, or folks that might not have access to the internet, even though they can get access at the library, but might not know how to use a computer. And the online version was for the ones that would go on our website frequently. But that is a very good point, Kathy, that giving them out to community influencers would be beneficial. And that's not something I thought of, but I think in the back of my mind was the concern that they wouldn't get back to us, because if they're getting the survey somewhere else that's not the library and they don't frequent the library often, I don't know if people will go to the library just to visit, to drop off the survey. Maybe they would though, so I think that's maybe something that was in the back of my head that made me think like, maybe I shouldn't do that. But it's great to hear like different opinions. And if maybe you want to elaborate, that'd be great too.
The man I spoke to who had such good luck with the woman from the church, she said, oh, give me whatever you want to hand out and I can make it available during services. And if it was a survey or something that had to be returned, that she would just say, could you fill these out now and pass them back, pass them down the row or whatever, that she would gather them and give them back. So I think you really first have to have these relationships with the individual influencers and get them excited enough about, like, this is something that they can do to really help their own community. And once they're really on board and you're having maybe regular, monthly meetings with them for coffee or something, then that's how you make sure that you get everything back. Or in the instance of like the restaurant, you could have surveys there that they would fill in and leave at the restaurant, that then you would go every couple weeks and pick them back up. But surveys always, from a broader marketing standpoint, always do better if they are given out more personally. Like just leaving the papers on a counter for maybe someone to pick up. Like, you'll never get a scientifically, statistically valid survey from just leaving them there for whomever. So it's really all about getting an influencer who will become a full partner and do the work for you and make sure that you get them back. So, and that's why I said it really takes time. Like you have to not be too hard on yourself if you don't start seeing these people come into the library more right away. You have to give yourself months or a year maybe before you start to see a lot more people from your target population really using your services.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It can definitely take longer than, one would hope. But that's the beauty of it. I think that was actually very good advice, the one that you gave out, and I will keep that in mind for future experiences. But it is very important to reach out to people in the community, that already have people that trust them, like you said. And I didn't think of, going back to the restaurant or the church and stuff to pick up the flyers or the surveys and things like that. That's actually a really good point. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for your insight. I greatly appreciate it.
I think that's the out part of outreach. Like you have to get out of your building and go to where those people are. They're not going to come into you until they have seen you go out to them numerous times and show that you really have a commitment, because translating one flyer and leaving it on a restaurant counter shows almost no commitment at all. It's like I did this thing I was supposed to do. I've checked off the box and now I'm done. But that's not enough to really be serving them. You have to be committed, which isn't easy if you have a tiny staff with 10 million other things to do. So I do totally get that. But so if you decide to do outreach to another population, whether it's because they speak a different language or for any other reason, any population that you haven't really marketed to yet, you really have to think strategically in the beginning and ideally plan a campaign that, can start with the meeting influencers and making friends and then distributing things. And, it's really a long-term thing and if you think strategically about it and make a plan, it will be so much more effective than just doing like a little scatter shot. I put a survey up there and I translated a poster and I had a Spanish story time, check, I'm done. So that's the bad news. You can't just check it off and be done.
No, that's very true. And we can see how, during COVID, why the numbers went down so drastically, because there was such little opportunity to do that outreach physically. And I know that a lot of different libraries kind of use social media and other ways to reach out to patrons that were creative. But it is taking a while still for libraries to pick up, some traction. But I think now that COVID is a little bit not as low as we would hope, but it is making it a little bit easier to kind of physically go out there. And obviously staffing issues are across all public libraries, unfortunately. especially when you have one or two people doing the outreach and marketing and all that stuff. But these are really great points. Has anybody had success doing outreach on social media though, to immigrant communities or anything of that sort? I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with, using the social media in your library. It depends, I guess. Some libraries have their own librarian that does, the outreach and all that on social media.
So we do have a social media, but I just want to preface that I've been here in this position for a month, which is why I was so excited to get into this webinar so I can see, what other people are doing. But we do have a social media. I just don't know how much of it has been focused on outreach type things like that, as opposed to, I feel like it's mostly like showcasing things that we've already been doing, so if anyone is doing outreach on social media, I'm very interested to hear how you guys do that.
We're not doing it yet, but Alicia, do you remember where's Natalie now? What library, do you know? They're using WhatsApp to reach out. We haven't started yet. She was at Princeton, but she's somewhere else now. And so they've started a WhatsApp account and they're pushing out programs there. And people can ask questions, and they are basically using Google Translate for any languages they don't have someone that can translate for. But that's one avenue to look at. We haven't started that yet. We're just looking at all our social media. We do have a librarian that does Facebook, Instagram. But again, it's mostly promoting programs or things we're doing.
Yeah, the WhatsApp is very interesting actually, because I know that a lot of my family members use WhatsApp, like probably 90% of my Hispanic family members use WhatsApp. But I know that there's also another library worker. I don't know if she's doing it in South Brunswick or if she did it in her previous job, but Jetare was also using WhatsApp to reach out to immigrant communities, specifically like Hispanic communities, because that was the language that she spoke. But how does that kind of look like in action? Like, do you guys kind of have a list of people on WhatsApp that you send stuff to, or do you post on their story? Like, how does it work?
I think you have to develop followers, or I'm not even sure because we haven't really looked at it yet. But if I remember correctly, yeah, you have to sort of build a community there too. So.
Got it. Thank you so much for that. Anybody else have any questions or any concerns? Anything else you want to throw out there?
Hi. First of all, I just want to thank you for all your suggestions, everybody. They have been so helpful and brilliant. What would be an example of a survey? Is it possible to some questions that would be on that survey?
Yeah, so I might be able to drop a link, but I'm not really sure if I can open it right now, but I can kind of give you the rundown of what kind of questions were on it.
Yeah.
So initially the survey was kind of geared more toward adults, because we wanted to really figure out what kinds of programs and services the adult community wanted to see at the library and kind of pick up on our programming as well. And it was also a really good opportunity to plug the community advisory board, which was, going to be geared toward community members to come together in one space and talk about, the different kinds of services they want to see at the library, or even an opportunity for us to let them know as well what programs and services we had that they might have not even known about. So we wanted to use a survey as a way of like saying, hey, you just filled out the survey that had a bunch of questions asking about your opinion. And you can also do this at the community advisory board meetings, you know, like in person with other people. And it was essentially asking them, you know, would you be interested in, let's say, like our take-home kits, right? Our science kits, our arts and crafts kits. What kind of books do you want to see at the library? Do you prefer virtual or in-person programming? Things like that, and whether they've had success when they visited the library. So did you go home without getting the help that you needed? So questions like that to kind of let people give us a little bit more insight on where they're at, whether they were ready for in-person programming or not. And also an opportunity, at least for the Spanish Community Advisory Board, to get Hispanic members of the community to come together. And that was going to be an opportunity also for us to be able to connect with the community and let them know what programs and services we had available for free. Because like Kathy said, and someone else said, a lot of people didn't know that everything was completely free. They thought that there was a cost to our English classes or citizenship classes, all of this. And so the meetings were going to be an opportunity for us to get feedback from the community, for community members to come together and feel like they have a voice, you know. And for the Spanish community side, it was an opportunity for Hispanic members to come together and realize, like, oh, our library, you know, they really care, you know, and these services are not just for certain people, they're for us too, and we can see ourselves using them. And I really had a lot of people that would say, not a lot of people because only 2 people showed up, so I don't know why I'm saying a lot. It's kind of hard to do programming sometimes, but they were able to then, you know, spread the word. You know, the 2 people that came the first time and were different from the 2 people that came the second time, you know, but I had emails asking me about it and I sent out the link. But I think people were excited because they were like, oh, like, I'm going to tell my cousin, I'm going to tell my aunt, you know, like my aunt really likes this. I want to do it. And I'm even going to try to do a program with one of the people who came to the community advisory board on how parents can help their children out by helping themselves out first. So it's kind of an interesting partnership between like adult programming, but also children's programs, because it will be something that will benefit children in the long run as well. And that will be in Spanish. So I think a lot of times, like, you know, when we do programs that are aimed for like parenting, or even like helping children that are on the spectrum, because she works with children that are on the spectrum. So she was like, you know, in our community, we have a certain way of like disciplining children. And I want to teach parents in our community and in our culture that there's a healthier way of disciplining children with love and respect, you know, compassion. And I thought that was wonderful, because what better way to help the community out by providing them such a helpful resource that normally would be offered in English, you know. So that is gonna probably pick up soon. We're gonna let a lot of people know about it. We're gonna reach out to organizations to let them know about it. And we're gonna partner with the children's department, that they have a really good following for a lot of their programs. They have a lot of parents that come into that children's department that don't always go upstairs to the adult services department. You know, they're still adults, but they just stick in the children's department because they want to be with their child. So I think it'll be a good opportunity to kind of bridge those 2 together and reach out to the community and help them in a different way. But yeah, essentially, that's all that the survey kind of did for us. So let us know what services people wanted to see, but also use that information to provide programs that fit their needs and their concerns and their availability, you know, whether they wanted virtual or in person, what times they wanted. We even were able to narrow it down, like people mainly like programs weekdays in the evenings, you know, through the survey. So then we hope that this will help us kind of get more people in the door and let more people know about what we have to offer at the library for free, you know. And Kathy, I saw your comment in the chat. On social media, they do follow our accounts. We have a pretty good following on Instagram and Facebook. Twitter is a little bit less because Twitter is mainly like younger users, and Facebook has a lot of the moms. They go on Facebook to, look at the programs that we have available. They even ask each other questions like in the comments under the program and like connect with each other. And we do share all of our programs on Facebook, but we share them to different Facebook groups. So for example, there's one called Mamás de Elizabeth, which means moms in Elizabeth, but in Spanish. So it's like Hispanic moms. It's a Hispanic mom group in Elizabeth. If we have like a program that's geared more toward like the Hispanic community, we'll share it to Latinos in Elizabeth group, which is another group. So like we kind of like, we share it to different groups with the hopes that more people will see it. Those people don't necessarily follow us, but they will eventually follow us. Like we do get follows often, or like likes from people that don't follow us that saw it on a different page that was shared. And it's usually the same people that share it, which is awesome because now we know like, okay, these people are really caring about our programs. Let's make sure that they know about it, right? Because then we know that they'll tell somebody else and share it to somebody else, and they have a big following. So
they're your influencers.
There are influencers, yeah. There are virtual influencers. You know, when we can't go in person to see all these people, like social media really brings it all together in a way that is different from in person. Like when we don't have enough staff members to go out and, meet up with these church members or community members, like we have social media. We have, our programs like the Community Advisory Board. So, but you are right, Kathy, it is very important to go out in person, really engage with the community so that they know that we care and that we're listening and that we want to really provide the best services for them. And also so that they can just know our name, like I think a lot of times like patrons don't know our names, even though we see them like every day. And it might be because, we're not doing the work of like being like, hey, this is my name, this is what we're doing here, and we hope that you can join us. So that's very important too. Thank you very much. Well, for everybody joining, I really appreciate it. And it really shows that you care about, outreach to immigrant communities. But yeah, very great ideas today.
Yep. No, there's so many great ideas. Thank you all. This is so helpful for me too.